Okay, so part two of the response to John L. Armstrong's position that Jesus Christ actually did not exist. Now, I've shown that, and I've drawn upon documents like the Gospels to show that indeed there is historical record, and I've pointed out that the contemporaries of the time did not argue that there really isn't any historical data whatsoever that would call into question the historicity of Jesus Christ, and I think that's a huge one. Even people, when given the opportunity to, and even people that would have interest in debunking Jesus, they just simply didn't do that. It wasn't a position that was ever held. No one ever did that until recently. Okay, it's a recent innovation, and it's something that really only could have happened this late on. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next thing that you say. First of all, I wrapped up last post by saying that the lesser cases, the lesser documents that are called on, I don't particularly need those. But then you go on to say this, that it even gets shakier than that. Those are the words you use. Say it even gets shakier than that. And then you go on to talk about the different sects and the different talk about Gnosticism and all that. Quite frankly, I think that it's an interesting discussion talking about the Gnostics. However, quite frankly, it's not germane to the discussion. It has nothing to do with the historicity of Jesus. And quite frankly, you don't match the two at all. So here's where I think where we're at here. I just genuinely believe that there's only one reason to question the historicity of Jesus, and there's really only one kind of individual that's going to doubt that. Now, first of all, I will say this. It's possible that a person can do that just because they're being kind of rambunctious. Maybe they just want to, play the devil's advocate and just kind of have fun with it. In that case, okay, whatever. But if a person seriously does it, the only way to do it is if they really have an agenda, if they're agenda driven. Okay? Now, I think it's unfortunate because, like I say, I don't believe that a person has to argue that point. And when they do argue the point, I just think that it's so unfortunate. It weakens anything else that a person is going to say. I'm going to use this as an example. There are people who I think have some good points, who say some things that are good, who are Christians, but then they'll go and say something that I think, oh no, what'd you go down that road for? For example, if someone talks about how the King James Bible is the only Bible that's really worth reading. All the other Bibles are terrible. King James only people. I think, well, goodness gracious, what in the world did you go and do that for? That kind of diminishes anything else that you'd have to say. Or here's something. There are certain positions that people will try to argue that I just think is so unneeded and unnecessary. Now, might surprise some Christians to hear this, but I've got no problems saying this. I'll say this: when apologists try to go down the road of trying to historically prove the resurrection of Christ. Oh goodness, don't do that. Well, wait a minute, you can't do it. I don't think it can be done. Now there's much that can be said about Christ. I think that's why it's called faith. Okay, that's why there's faith. If it could be proven, then of course you wouldn't need faith, right? Of course you and I were going to agree on that. But listen, don't go down that. You don't have to do that. Similarly, listen, when you go start questioning the validity of Jesus, like, oh goodness, that I think it really does weaken and minimize your other points. Here's one other example I'm going to give. There are definitely people who fear giving certain points for fear of what's going to be done with the point. And that fear puts them in a point of being intellectually dishonest. Okay, for example, I've shared with many people, I'll be talking with some people who say, well, let's just start with something real basic. Would you believe that there's something as absolute truth? There's objective absolute truth. Now, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that don't believe that. And I'll say, hold on a second, no reason to get upset about this. It's just even the most basic of things. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Would you agree with me there? 2 plus 2 equals 4. And I've seen people do this. They'll say, well, No, no, not necessarily. And not necessarily. 2 plus 2 equals 4 to you, but it doesn't equal, it may not equal 4 to everybody. I'm like, well, hold on a second. You've just, that's just anti-intellectual is what that is. It's, you don't have to fear what's going to be done with that truth. And it's so unfortunate because, like I say, it's not intellectually honest. Similarly, I believe that that's what we're dealing with here with the historicity of Jesus. Listen, you don't have to be concerned about the historicity of Jesus. You can grant that he exists. There's nothing intrinsically damaging or threatening about that, unless a person is just so fearful of what can be done with that. Now, listen, we can debate who he was. We can debate whether he was truthful, whether he was crazy, whether he was a false prophet. We can debate these things. But let's not go down the road of like, well, he just didn't exist. Historically, that's never been argued. So, when people start to go down that road, it's just so unfortunate because, and I'll just say this one more time, it calls into question the soundness of one's logic. So I think that you would do well, and I would challenge you to do this. I would challenge you and encourage you to even remove the post, because you've got a lot of other things to say, good things to debate about. And by the way, you call into question, oh, people suppress the truth and all this, and the church has done those things. That you think that people should encourage debate. You know what? I'll let you know that's exactly where I'm at. I'm all up for thinking. I'm all up for debate. I love vigorous debate. Let's go ahead and do those. Let's debate those things. But this one right here, unfortunately, there's really nothing to talk about. Okay, so I look forward to talking with you in future posts. Have a great day.